You're not getting old, you're getting misinformed. And if you've ever caught yourself saying, I just don't bounce back like I used to, or I guess this is just a part of aging, this episode is definitely for you because I'm calling BS on that narrative. Science says that you've got plenty of prime left in the tank. And today we're going to break down the truth about strength, recovery, hormones, and longevity after 40 and why the right training might just add decades of badassery to your life. So, jumping right in, part one, we're going to talk about aging. Aging doesn't equal falling apart. Okay. Like, we can't deny that aging is real, but the narrative that we've built around it is straight garbage, in my opinion. We've been conditioned to think that turning 40 plus means injuries come faster, or mid 40s means metabolism tanks. And after 50, you should slow down and do water aerobics or some crap like that. And it's framed like an inevitability. It's framed like a truth and not something that you can actually do much about. You get slower, you get weaker, you get more aches and pains, and it's just a part of getting older. We hear it, unfortunately, all the time. And the problem is, it's not a law of nature. It's honestly a sales pitch. And we see it in the research that shows the average adult loses about 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade after age 30. But, and this is the key, that happens mostly to people who stop training with intention. And I'm going to be sure to link to the couple of research articles that I bring up today because I'm not going to go in depth. I'm just going to give you the highlights, but you can definitely check those out if you want. The big thing is you're not losing muscle because you're 40 or 50 or 60. You're losing it because you haven't picked up anything heavier than your kid's backpack in 5 years. Aging is catabolic by default. And the more we hear it, the more we start planning our lives around the assumption that decline is unavoidable. And what's worse is we stop taking ownership over what we can control because we've been told it doesn't matter anyway. And this is what most people call aging and what it actually is. It's sedentary living, it's poor sleep, it's chronic stress, it's your processed food overload, lack of movement variability, strength work, no load, no intensity, no challenge. You have to fight back anabolically with strength, with intensity, and with movement that demands adaptation. In other words, it's not the age that's the problem here. It's the absence of a challenge. No, you're not old. You are just understimulated, underrecovered, and underslept. And we've been talking about it a lot the last few podcasts about the pillars of health. And you better believe that I'm going to bring it up again. All right. So let me just say this plain and simple. Most of you aren't over the hill. You're just undertrained and underrecovered. And I'm not saying that to shame anyone. I'm saying it again because we see it every single week at Movement. It's something that we've been hearing more and more of. And it's something that people seem to just settle with and just say, like, oh, I guess this is just getting older. And I'll admit, shoot, I'm not far from 40. And I have to put more time into mobility work and stability work and the prehab and the warm-ups and the cool downs and all of those things. But that's just something that everybody should do, right? You know, you see it all the time. Some people walk in and they're in their late 50s, 60s, whatever it may be, former athletes, and they just simply seem to be comfortable with saying, I just don't bounce back like I used to. And it's not a wrong statement, but you have to follow up and ask, like, okay, well, how are you sleeping? How are you trying to optimize your sleep? How are you trying to optimize your warm up and your cool down? And how often are you lifting heavy? Or when's the last time you gave yourself an actual break from the gym and took a deload week maybe? Or what's your recovery look like? Outside of the 2 IPAs and all of the influencing that you see being done on Instagram for the cold tubs and the saunas and the million and one morning routines that you're supposed to be doing. And honestly, like, you can get looked at and just be like, you asked them to solve a calculus freaking problem, right? You know, the thing is, the decline isn't random. It's pretty predictable and it's pretty preventable when you start to look at your daily habits over time. There was another study that looked at older adults who followed a structured resistance training plan. Okay. And the result was not only did they gain strength, but they retained it long term. They improved bone density and had better neuromuscular function than sedentary counterparts that were 20 years younger. So, what does that mean? In other words, if you train like an athlete, you can definitely perform like one. Age is not the limiter, it's the absence of progressive overload. And then the recovery side of things. Again, there's going to be more that has to be put in, and 10 minutes more of dedicated time pre workout. But you don't need to train like you're prepping for the NFL combine. But you definitely do need to train with focus and you need to train with intensity because walking on a treadmill for 15 minutes, doing a couple machine curls and stretching your hamstrings isn't going to make your knee stop hurting. And it's definitely not going to make your body move better. You've got to move with intent and not just motion. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention hormones. However, I'm not going deep into this. This is not my area of expertise. We definitely have referral partners that can talk more in depth to this. But we hear a lot about hormones, okay? And they definitely play a role. They have to be addressed. But it's also sometimes used as a scapegoat for why you're tired or sore or moody and recovering a little slower. And like, yes, your hormones definitely do change. Hormonal changes are real. But most people blaming, let's just go with testosterone levels or estrogen are obviously the two biggest ones, haven't really dialed in the basics. They're sleeping for 5 hours. They're eating a crap ton of processed foods, overworking, undertraining, dealing with a ton of chronic stressors that are really just tearing apart your entire nervous system. You want to optimize the hormones, the growth hormone, the anabolic environment in your body. And the first thing that people do is turn towards medications or some type of, replacement, especially TRT. TRT is blowing up these days. But here's your checklist to start with before you do anything else. Train hard, train heavy, and train often. Okay. Your compound movements like your squats and your deads. Yeah, I said it. Your squats and your deadlifts and your presses and your pulls. You need to be doing those. 3 to 4 sessions a week is optimal for most men and women 40, 50 plus years. Okay. Another study to back some of this stuff up showed that resistance training significantly increased testosterone levels in men aged 40 to 60, especially when using multi-joint movements at higher intensities. Don't skip your legs. Also, don't judge me for saying that, considering my legs are relatively small. My calves are relatively small. I would blame genetics. However, I just linked to a study last week in the newsletter that you should definitely subscribe to that talked about genetics not playing a role. So I can no longer blame my small calves on genetics, which is really unfortunate. Anyways, I digress. The second thing to optimize is your sleep. It's literally the secret weapon. It's the cheapest supplement you'll ever buy because you don't have to buy it. It's free. You just need to learn to optimize it. Okay. Aim, everybody's heard of it, the 7 to 9 hours of consistent, high quality sleep. Deep sleep is your hormone production, especially testosterone and growth hormone. 1 week of 5 to 6 hours of sleep can drop your testosterone levels by 10 to 15% alone. Also, if you are awake for 18 hours, you are operating at a level of somebody that is considered legally drunk. Fun fact, learned that last week at the Global Leadership Summit, which was wild. So sleep, super important. You can't out supplement that. I don't really care how many other things you try to do. Sleep, dial it in. Eat like you respect your body. Don't just chock it full of processed foods, okay? Standard, hit your protein, non-negotiable carbs. Don't be scared of them. Be scared of the processed carbs, not the healthy whole food carbs, okay? It fuels your performance. It's not the enemy. You're not in keto prison. Eat your carbs, fats. Don't be scared of fats. It's essential for your hormone production, especially cholesterol-based ones like testosterone. Yes, cholesterol in and of itself is not bad. You need it, okay? Now, don't go blaming your high cholesterol levels and saying Trevor said it wasn't bad. There's always a line and there's always certain things to look at. Worry about your cholesterol? We have referral sources for that. So, most of you aren't lacking hormones. You're lacking calories and quality inputs. We've got to talk about the nervous system. Regulation matters. Chronic stress. We have another episode about that a few episodes back. Chronic stress is equal to chronically elevated cortisol, which wrecks your hormones. Okay. Take time and apply strategies to decrease your stress. Breathing, walking, managing your workload and mental state are really recovery multipliers. And if you are on all day and you never reset your nervous system, don't be shocked when your recovery sucks and your sleep is trashed. I can talk from firsthand experience. I've dealt with this. It's legit. It's real. And so if you're in your 40s plus, you're not doomed. You're just overdue for a reset on your habits and your inputs. We have seen 45-year-olds who move like they're 28. We have seen 60, 70 plus year olds who are still crushing workouts and are taking the time to take care of themselves. The difference isn't the age, it's how they're training, how they're recovering and eating, and ultimately living. So, the 40 plus athlete game plan. So, how to outperform, without blowing that hammy. Here's the truth: you don't really need a total life overhaul. You need to be consistent. That is a word that we have been saying to many people, and it's probably the biggest thing to work towards. Don't implement a million and one things. In today's world, you're seeing all of these morning routines that include 10, 15, 20 plus steps, and they're saying to do it every single day, and that's just not the case. You need to pick a few things that you can stick with and that you can be consistent with, and those small habits, those small consistencies will make a big change over time. Okay. You need the right inputs, the right training structure that respects your recovery and adaptation, not just focuses on intensity. It's not about dialing it back. It's about dialing things in. So first and foremost, strength train 3 to 4 times a week, non-negotiable. Strength is the foundation of durability. It protects your joints. It builds muscle mass. It's super important for bone density. And honestly, most importantly, it makes everything else a little easier. Stairs, sports, sleep, getting up and off the toilet, all of it. But here's what most older athletes get wrong. They confuse movement with progress, confuse fatigue with results. The big thing is if I was drenched in sweat after a workout, that was a good workout. But really, you should be chasing the stimulus, okay? So here's what your training could focus on are the big 5 movement patterns. So that's your squat, your hinge, your push, your pull, and your carry. So those are things like RDLs, again, deadlifts, swings, hip thrusts, bench press, push press, rows, pull-ups, farmer carries, rack overhead carries. Big stability builders. Start with full body or upper lower body splits. Track progress. Don't max out. Move with intention and leave a rep or two in the tank. We have, great coaches in the area that can definitely help with these sorts of things. So if you're looking for a place, please let us know. We can definitely connect you and point you in the right direction because they are great coaches in the Green Bay area. Secondly, train power 1 time a week. Yes, even in the older athlete. Power fades faster than strength as we age. So if you're not training it, you're accelerating the decline. So these are things, think med ball slams, definitely work in rotational throws, jump. People need to jump and sprint. So box, pogos, depth jumps, sprint. Obviously start where you're at and build up. Sled pushes, explosive sprints, kettlebell swings, landmine presses. Your Olympic lifts are phenomenal for power, okay? So pick 2 to 3 explosive movements, low reps, high intent, high quality. Focus on the quality, not on the quantity. You're not trying to feel tired with these. You're trying to reignite speed and timing and overall force production. And if you've got joint issues or pain, power can still be trained in low impact ways. Med ball work is great. Controlled jumps onto high boxes, fast step ups, pure gold. Point 3, Move daily, mobilize weekly, if not daily. So mobility isn't sexy. People don't like it until you can't tie your shoes without throwing your back out. We've seen a lot of that this week, actually. But as we age, we lose not just our strength, but our movement options. And what I mean by that is everything starts to get more stiff, more tight, more restricted. And then all of a sudden, like we're hit with this shoulder issue or our low back flares up. We have knee pain. So here's a baseline. You hear about walk daily at least 7 to 10,000 steps every day. I would argue, and this is something that, we have on our back docket of things, is to try and work or walk more than 10,000 steps a day. A real good thing to implement. Daily movement, hit 5 to 10 minutes of joint prep and breath work. Okay. And then weekly mobility, work 2 to 3 sessions on problem areas. The high common ones we see, your thoracic spine, the hips, and obviously the shoulders, ankles, and that will help things like your low back and your knees. And I would argue just work that stuff. And I say weekly, I would aim, not a little bit daily, to try and hit those few areas at least 3 times a week. Okay. You can start slow. If you need options, let us know. But start slow, controlled, joint specific, and then layer in your end range ISOs, your active mobility, or your loaded stretching. Fourth, deload like it's part of your program because it definitely should be. Recovery isn't something you earn when you're beat up. It's something that you need to program to keep you from getting beat up in the first place. So what I personally like to do is, it used to be every 8 weeks, I would take a deload week. But to be completely honest, right now I'm on every 4. I'm kind of picking it up a little bit with the workouts, and I need a deload week every month. So what that looks like is you reduce your load by 30 to 50%, and you cut your volume in half. You don't not go to the gym. You don't take that week to recover, which some people means lay on the couch, eat whatever food you want, and then go back to the gym and wonder why you kind of feel like crap. It's your deload. Reduce load by 30 to 50%, cut your volume in half, focus on movement quality, breath, and then recovery. And these are where the real gains really happen, okay? It's during your recovery, not during the grind. Most of our older athletes are either chronically undertraining and not hitting enough intensity, or are overtraining and not taking the foot off the gas frequently enough. The sweet spot is really cycling the intensity and honoring your recovery. And lastly, I had to talk about it. Eat and hydrate like it really matters. And let me say this real clear. You're not recovering like crap because of your age. You're recovering like crap because you're underfed, underhydrated, and overstimulated. So again, protein, make sure you're hitting it. I personally aim for 1 gram per pound of body weight. I feel good at that level. Hydrate. I like a gallon. At least aim for half of your body weight in ounces of water at minimum. And don't just drink the water. Add electrolytes, add a little bit of salt. If you've got underlying health issues, be aware of those, check with your doc. But most people do well with electrolytes or a little bit of salt added into the water. When you sweat, you don't just sweat water, okay? Timing. I feel good. I've been adding carbs in before my workout, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat. And I have very good workouts. So that's usually like an hour, 30 to 60 minutes before my training. Okay. And then the quality, guys, um, really eat like you are trying to take care of yourself. And that's not filling things with packaged, processed garbage. It's fueling your body with quality whole foods. Okay. And that's kind of the wrap. If you're training consistently and still not feeling great, I would check your stress levels, check the alcohol, check late night screen time, because it's honestly all connected. And the one thing that most people never track, it's the intensity plus the recovery feedback loop. So every week, check in with yourself. Shoot, every day, check in with yourself. Did I sleep the 7 to 9 hours last night? If you do it every week, did I sleep 7 to 8 hours most nights? Did I train with intent? Did I not just show up? And again, guys, I'm not preaching perfection. I'm preaching being consistent. Okay. You're not going to hit this stuff every day. Give yourself grace, but most of the time you should. Okay. Did I feel recovery? Did I eat the proper food? Did I hydrate? Did I allow for some breath and down regulation time? Did I move every day? If the answer to even two of those is no, try harder. You can't necessarily blame your age for how you feel. Dial some of these things in a little bit more, okay? You don't have to scale back just because you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 plus. You just have to scale smarter. You're not in decline mode. You're in an opportunity range. Okay. You've got the discipline, you've got life experience. And if you give your body the right stressors, it's going to respond. You're not just training for today. Somebody we see right now is um, they're the centenarian athlete. They're running the centenarian marathon. And I love that mindset. You're training for the dad who wants to toss his kid in the air at 60. You're for the grandma who hikes the mountains, for the version of you that still wants to show up with fire 10, 20, 30 years now. Train for them because they'll thank you big time. If you have questions, never hesitate to reach out. As always, thanks for listening, and we will talk with you later.